lovely people. Welcome to my virtual couch. Happy Friday to you all. I've been wanting to record this video for a while. I wanted to record a quick video about attachment styles because a lot of times when I see clients, how they attach to others really speaks to the foundation of the attachment styles. If you don't know what an attachment style is, everybody has an attachment style. Okay, there are 4 types, and I'm going to go over it in this video. Also, check out my last video. I went to the Renaissance movie, a film by Beyonce, and I lived my life at the movie theater. So please check out that video if you have not checked it out. I give a whole breakdown of the video and what I thought about it. Okay, so let's get into it. So a secure attachment is the first type of attachment style, and it sounds just like it's called a secure attachment. Secure attachment is basically when people feel secure in relationships, they feel understood, they feel comforted, they feel valued. And this stems from childhood. So an example could be like this. Think about growing up in your home. Did you feel understood? Did you feel safe? Did you feel valued? Were your caregivers, parents, whoever was caring for you, were they emotionally available for you? Did they resolve conflicts effectively? So, for example, let's say you had a rough day at school. Did you have the safe space to go to your parents and say, I had a bad day at school, and your parents affirmed you, made you feel valued, and helped you problem solve whatever the situation was, right? So ultimately, a secure attachment is when you felt you were able to get reassurance from your caregivers without punishment, right? You felt validated. And that type of secure attachment styles translate into adulthood, where you, as an adult that has a secure attached childhood, they're able to easily connect with other people. They have a high self-esteem. They are emotionally available. They are easily trusting of others. They're able to regulate their emotions. So when there's conflict, they're able to have difficult situations. They're able to seek emotional support. They don't withdraw, right? They don't isolate, but they sit down and they have an effective conversation, right? They don't stonewall. They're comfortable with having difficult conversations. They have really good communication skills. And communication skills doesn't mean just talking. Communication skills also means talking and listening and reflective, right? So look at like your friend or your partner, right? How do they manage their emotions during conflict? How do they respond when you have hurt them? Are they able to communicate effectively? Are they able to forgive? Those are signs of having a secure attachment style. People that have a secure attachment style are healthy in relationships, are healthy in intimate relationships. So they navigate the relationships well, right? They don't deal with jealousy issues. They trust their partner's intentions, right? They feel worthy of love and they don't seek external reassurance, right? So again, if your foundation of how you relate to others was healthy and secure and reassuring, then that translates into relationships. Okay. And when I mean relationships, I just don't mean intimate relationships. I mean friendships. Next type of attachment style is avoidant attachment style. So avoidant attachment style, or sometimes some people use it interchangeably for anxious avoidant. This is basically where maybe in childhood you may have had strict, emotional distant, or absent caregivers, right? So think about growing up, right? How present were your caregivers? Were they maybe one parent worked a lot, right? So they were not emotionally available and all they provided was just the finances, right? Or maybe you didn't have a safe space to communicate with your caregivers. The caregivers were emotionally distant because, look, I got to worry about putting food on the table and paying the bills. So they did not have the time or the energy to really sit down and really talk to you about what's going on with you. In certain households, they may experience things like, have you ever heard the saying, a child is to be seen, not to be heard? Those are those things that is like avoidant attachment style, right? So caregivers may have, um, because of the unavailability of your caregivers, you may have grown up faster than you should have. You may be super independent. You would probably tend to fend for yourself, right? Um, and sometimes you might get in trouble a lot, right? So you might get in trouble for depending on your caregivers a lot. And if you try to express your needs or emotions, you are rejected. And a lot of times with avoidant attachment style, you learn very quickly that this is not the household where we sit down and we have conversations about feelings, right? So because of that, you learn to problem solve on your own and you learn how to deal with conflict on your own, right? So there's an emotional neglect there, right? And some of my clients sometimes might say, like, I just learned to depend on myself because I couldn't really depend on anybody. And that translates into relationships, because then while you're even in a relationship, you are still independent within the relationship, right? So, how does this translate into relationships? So, in relationships, you may not feel comfortable expressing your feelings. You may be more dismissive of others. You might have a hard time trusting people, right? You might spend time more alone. Some people might have commitment issues. I don't know if I'm going to trust you, right? Like, I don't know if you're going to be there for me because, growing up, I didn't really have anybody, emotionally there for me. You might avoid emotional stuff. You may not want to be talking about feelings all the time. Have you ever been in a relationship with someone that we can do everything else, but when it comes to talking about feelings, I don't want to go there, right? They avoid getting emotionally close, right? Your partner may feel like, I can never really get inside, I feel stonewalled or dismissed, right? Because I'm avoiding things that's going to, allow me to be vulnerable, right? People that are avoidant attachment, they are they're avoidant of anything that makes them vulnerable, because they may see it as weakness, or they may see it as, if I'm vulnerable, then, I can't trust you. That's avoidant attachment. So there may be a lot of frustrations in the relationships because partners may feel like, I can't get in. Then we have anxious attachment style. So it's exactly what it sounds like. Anxious attachment style was, there was unpredictability with your caregivers. You didn't know if they were going to be here one minute, you didn't know if they were not going to be there. And we usually see that with clients that may have had a parent, maybe parents were divorced or parents are separated, or your parents were co-parenting, and you may have one parent that's kind of in and out of your life. So the unpredictability creates an instability and an insecurity. So I don't know if, you might tell me that you're coming to pick me up and you don't come to pick me up. So, right. So it creates an anxiety because I can't depend on you. Right. So there's the, and how that translate in adulthood is there might be a fear of abandonment, a fear of rejection. Sometimes you might see things that's we might see people with anxious attachment styles be codependent, and that's another video that I'm going to do soon. I'm going to do a video on codependency and what that looks like in relationships, right? So basically, an anxious attachment person has dealt with inconsistencies growing up, right? And so even if their partner is not showing them that, there's that fear that I don't know if you're going to walk away. So abandonment issues translate into adult relationships. And again, and that might be in friendships too, right? In friendships, your friend might be super territorial, right? They may be super unforgiving, right? If you say you're going to call back and you don't call back, then I'm upset. If you say you're going to text back and you don't text back, I'm upset. If you cancel a date on me, or if you were supposed to go out and you bail out on me, I get super, super upset by it, right? And that might cause a rift in our friendship. An anxious attachment style, people, the child usually feels confused, right? And so how that might show up in adulthood too is that they may feel easily overwhelmed, right? Sometimes they may, One minute we're close, one minute we're not, right? And they may have like what we call clingy tendencies, right? So like I attach super, super tight because I'm just afraid that you're gonna let me go, right? And then sometimes you might see some jealousy stuff in intimate relationships. Like I'm highly sensitive, I'm jealous. I have a hard time being alone. If in a relationship your partner wants to do stuff by themselves, they may get jealous because what if you leave me? There's difficulty trusting others, right? Like I want to be close to you, but I don't. That's that anxious attachment style. There's a deep rooted fear of being abandoned, being neglected, being rejected, right? And it shows up in different areas in the relationship. And your partner may be feeling like, but I didn't do anything, right? But typically that's a trauma response from the inconsistency that your partner have experienced in their their childhood, right? You might see things like low self-esteem. You might see things like just the intense fear of, you leaving your partner. And it could really be draining and exhausting to your partner, right? Because it's like, I have to consistently reassure you, consistently validate you, and consistently tell you that I'm not going anywhere, right? And so that can cause a conflict in the relationship, right? And the last attachment style is a disorganized attachment style. A disorganized attachment style, we see that with childhood trauma, right? So with childhood trauma, children with these type of attachment style may seem confused. And I always say there's an overlap between a disorganized attachment style and an anxious attachment styles, right? Because in both scenarios, caregivers are inconsistent, right? Children fear and love them at the same time. So it's disorganized, right? That creates confusion, right? And how that again shows up in adulthood is you see a high level of anxiety. You see contradicting behavior. So one minute I'm in love with my partner, next minute I hate them, right? The inconsistent, it's disorganized, right? Sometimes we might see people that have personality disorders fall under this category. People that have addiction fall under this category. People that might self-harm fall under this category, right? So with those organized, you're seeing signs of avoidance and you're seeing signs of um, attachment. And in this type of attachment styles, your partner has difficulty regulating their emotions, which can be very scary for their partner experiencing that. This also can be confusing in a relationship because the one minute your partner can be very, very clingy, and the other minute they may be avoidant, right? So your partner is just like, I don't know. It creates instability in the relationship because your partner's like, I don't know how you're going to act from one moment to the next. But it's very important to recognize that this is a result of childhood trauma. Disorganized attachment styles, right? They feel like the person that's experienced the disorganized attachment styles, they don't want to avoid emotional intimacy. They don't want to avoid the emotional intimacy, but they also feel they're going to be rejected, right? So I fear it, but I seek it as well, which again can be confusing. So if it's confusing for their partner, imagine what it's like for the person experiencing it. Obviously, the goal is to have a secure attachment style because that is the healthiest out of all four. Sometimes I get asked if I have an anxious attachment style, can I ever get to a secure attachment style? Yes, that is very possible to get to it. First, there is the self awareness. Are you aware of how you are showing up in the relationship? Again, relationship means intimate or friendships. Are you aware that this is creating a conflict? So, first, what I would always recommend is obviously find yourself a good therapist. If you've had some trauma, get a good trauma therapist to help you address some of these issues and start doing like self-help books. I'm a big fan of self-help books, you know. Like I really love the book The Sugar Jar because it talks about setting boundaries with self and others, also examine, are there some unresolved trauma that we're not dealing with? Maybe start practicing some journaling skills, some self-reflecting skills, some workbooks are very helpful. I think that doing therapy techniques such as EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization. Reprocessing is very helpful. It helps to address trauma. Also, doing things like cognitive processing therapy is a good therapy style. Um, I would recommend you take the attachment style quiz. And if it's not secure attachment, write examples of how your unhealthy attachment styles have been showing up in relationships and where that possibly could stem from. If you already know the origin of your attachment style, again, if it's not secure attachment style, which is the goal that we want to have, then take a step back and look at what are some difficult conversations that you need to have with your partner. Hopefully your partner is open, but if your partner is not open, then I will recommend doing your own work, obviously with the therapist or with like a life coach, you know. And in addition to self-help and workbooks, doing things that connect with you. A lot of times when people have unhealthy attachment styles, we are not in tune with ourselves. We don't know what's going on with us. We're feeling confused. We're feeling anxious. We know what's happening, but we're not aware of the depth of how it's affecting us in the relationship. So doing things like yoga, meditation, any mindfulness practice that helps you to connect with self is very, very important. And taking a minute for yourself, right? Taking a minute to reflect. Are you actively being triggered that is causing you to not maintain healthy relationships? So for example, if you have a trauma, let's say if you have a trauma of a sexual abuse, right? Are you constantly being triggered? Like, is the person that abused you still around you? Do you have access to them, and do they have access to you? Because if you're trying to heal and the person that abused you still have access to you, that's not effective. So first we have to remove access, no matter what the relationship is. And sometimes people might give excuses like, oh, this person is my aunt or my et cetera, et cetera, so I have to maintain relationship. No, you don't. Sometimes in order to heal, we may need to cut certain relationships in order to progress. And that means accepting the fact that I may not have a relationship with this person, but in order for me to get better, so I can stop generations of this, I need to make some difficult decisions. So I hope this video was helpful. Again, if you're not aware of your attachment styles, I would recommend taking the attachment style quiz. It's through Psych Central. I'm going to put the link in the description box, and catch me in the next video.